Believe me, I've tripped many a time on these same choir stalls, so you're in good stead. And I was distracted a little during the Gloria today, although I was singing it with my whole heart. I was reminded when I saw this great crowd of witnesses, I said, oh dear me, my home parish that I grew up in New England, it was old-fashioned, but it was new-fashioned insofar as it had a nave, such as this, but it had two balconies flanking each side with 3 rows of chairs, 3 rows there. And I said, how can I get 2 balconies built and retrofitted? Somehow, someday. In our day, in our age, we are very security conscious. We lock everything we can. There was a time when I'm sure people, our grandparents, even in my own lifetime growing up, I don't think we locked our cellar door, much less sometimes even locking our kitchen door. We all lock our cars almost immediately as we leave them. And they're alarmed because I know that many times when I'm here in chapel or in the confessional, I hear one of those alarms going off. It just happens because we're just more aware of security. So in the beginning of our gospel today, we find the disciples closed off in a room out of fear, and they had locked the doors. The religious and political authorities who were responsible for Jesus' crucifixion might come after them next. The locked doors may have kept out Jesus' enemies, but they couldn't keep out the risen Lord. According to our gospel, Jesus came and stood among them, without knocking on the door, without waiting to be let in. He was now alive, and in this new kind of life gave him enormous possibilities. And in that new life, he could come to his disciples wherever they were, wherever we are. A locked door was no obstacle to him. The disciples thought Jesus was dead, and they presumed their following of him was over. In reality, it was only beginning. When Jesus stood among them, he first said to them, "Peace be with you." He wanted them to know that he was at peace with them, in spite of the fact that they had abandoned him in his passion and his death. He wanted them to know that his love for them had endured even though they had failed him. The wounds of his hands and of his side that he showed them were now glorious signs of his love for them and us. He had earlier said to them, "No one has greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." Having assured them that they were reconciled to him, he then empowered them to be agents of God's reconciling love in the world, breathing the Holy Spirit upon them. He sent them out to reveal God's merciful love to all. Those whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. We believe it. It is only those who deliberately reject God's offer of merciful love whose sins will be retained. In many ways, Easter is the feast of God's faithful, enduring, merciful love, revealed through the risen Jesus. In that opening scene of the gospel, none of the disciples were named, although we know them. We are all being encouraged to see ourselves as belonging to that number. The way the risen Lord related to them is how he relates to us all. The Lord comes and stands among us, regardless of where we find ourselves. Even if we try to lock the door so that the Lord would not be with us, he comes to dwell within our hearts through the Holy Spirit. He always comes to us with this gift of peace, a peace the world cannot give. He comes to assure us that his love for us endures even when we fail him. He pours the Spirit afresh into our hearts so that we can go forth in the strength of his Spirit to reveal to all the faithful his love to all those we meet. Just as he empowered his disciples to get out behind their closed doors and bring his faithful love to all, he empowers us all to do the same. He calls us to be an Easter people, messengers of his merciful love to all the world. So even in your darkest night, your darkest locked door, the Lord will come to be with you, saying to you, peace. He'll quench all your anxieties and bring you oceans of mercy.